Welcome to Commerce Media Matters, your go-to podcast for unpacking the world of commerce media. Here, we catch up with industry leaders on news, research, insights, perspectives, and everything in between.
Hi, I'm Nick, founder and CEO at Voodoo.
And I'm Paul, Director of Data and E-commerce at News Corp Australia. Today, we have the one and only Nick Smith in the hot seat. So as Managing Director of Australia's leading content marketing agency group, Medium Rare, Suddenly and Storyation, Nick's portfolio is brimming with big name brands like Bunnings, Coles, David Jones, and many more. We're going to explore the pulsating world of content and campaigns with a spotlight on the explosive growth of retail media.
Welcome, Nick. So good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Matt.
Really appreciate it. So let's kick things off and tell us exactly how did you land at Medium Rare?
Well, I actually helped the company, and not many people know this, when I was running the lifestyle and prestige division at News Corp. I think it's 10 years ago this July, we went into a joint venture with the founders of Medium Rare, which is Jerry Reynolds and Sally. They've since moved on. So I actually helped in the very, early days of Medium Rare when they were just the two of them setting up a business, and News had backed them, but they really didn't have any resourcing to go out pitch to new clients. So I actually remember crafting a new look Qantas magazine. At the time, didn't really know mass market, but I helped them put together a pitch to Coles. And then obviously David Jones with the Jones magazine. So originally the company started as, a custom publishing company, and I helped them navigate the hallways of News. But in the early days, I used the resourcing of my team at News to sort of get up the proposals and help them start to win in the market. Mm-hmm. And then, staying on the board for about 5 years, went overseas, ran a luxury publishing company called Bureau out of London. And when I came back, I actually was so overweight during the COVID pandemic. I was sliding back into Sydney, and I went to a fitness first class, and one of the leaders at Medium Rare was there and saw me and said, "Oh, you've got to come and see us." So a week later, I was back at Medium Rare.
And since it was just started with Medium Rare, you've also sort of expanded your portfolio of content agencies, haven't you?
Yeah. It's look, Medium Rare has done phenomenally well, and hats off to the founders. By the time I got back, it was a real pure content marketing agency. So we delivered services such as print, social, digital content, but then also, that end-to-end publishing service for brands where we actually help them commercialize their publishing assets and their content ecosystem. So in that time, News Corp had sort of got wind that, hey, content was the way of the future for brands. So it launched Suddenly, and also we purchased another agency called Storyation. So they now fall under my remit, which is fantastic.
And Nick, looking at your amazing portfolio of clients, you seem to have found the secret sauce with retailers in particular, and how you can transform sort of, retail objectives into compelling content that audiences are attracted to, rather than it just be that sales pitch or that e-commerce content it's a product description. You've actually cornered the market almost in creating compelling content that delivers retail outcomes. What can you give us a bit of insight on how you guys got so good at it?
Obviously, it starts with clients that really value, content. And, if I look at, some of the, the legacy things that we were doing for brands, such as the incredible Coles magazine, which is like the most read magazine ever in Australia, even at the heights of Women's League. Yeah, it's read by 2 million people now.
I did not know that. That's incredible.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and Coles realizes that, it's a value add for their consumers. That's the way that works. And not to give too many of the trade secrets away, but then obviously, at the end of a shop, a consumer is rewarded with a magazine that Coles know they value at around $6, and it's given away for free. It's almost like the end of the shopping cycle. So they take that away. A lot of people know the day it hits the shelves each month, they take it home, they pour through the recipes, and look, it is a beautiful retail model because Australians are very compliant. So whether it's a DIY plan from Bunnings or a recipe that they find in their favorite magazine, they are going to stick to the letter. So if it is a recipe that needs Coles condensed milk, they're going back into Coles to get the right product. So it sends through, a gift of, telling consumers, not selling to them, that they need to come back and be loyal to Coles. So that's kind of how that works in one sort of phase. But I think you're right, Paul. What we have done is either through the trust that we've built.
Yeah.
So, a lot of our contracts with the clients are long-term, so they're 3 years. And with those big organizations like a Coles or a Bunnings or an Officeworks or David Jones, they get their own team at Medium Rare. So it's not like a shared agency model. So they get a team that's living and breathing their consumers by seeing the data on Facebook or the response to SEO articles or just, the increase in readership of the magazine. So they get a team that becomes an extension of their marketing team. And so from any one day at any one brand, we're talking to the CMO, down to the marketing assistant, down to, I guess, the merch team in the buying team, or even, the product development team. So over time with each of these retailers, we get a deep understanding of what's happening. So for example, a lot of them are planning Christmas now and we're right in there. And I think it's a testament to what, content has done in terms of the marketing mix, that especially now we get a seat at the table early on with other agencies, which I'm really proud of. So, we get briefed at the same time as the creative agencies, the PR agencies, and the media agencies, and the content strategy response of, say, a retail period like Christmas is fed in from the start.
Yeah, that stat around Coles magazine blows me away.
Yeah,
on it, quite frankly. Coles is an incredible Australian brand, very well known, very well loved. You've worked with some incredible Australian brands that have got a presence here, but also on an international stage like Qantas. What's some of the most exciting things you've been working on recently?
I think the most recent thing, and we're really quite excited on, is I guess setting up content ecosystem for Commonwealth Bank, which at the start I was a bit nervous about. Obviously, people love the brands that they obviously are customers of. At the same time, they love to hate the brands, and the ones that you've mentioned have gone through some rocky periods.
They've got some tough times.
Yeah, there's some tough times, and it's most, if you take Qantas, like people adore that brand, but then when there are rocky times, the consumers are the first ones to.
Do we think maybe there's some Netflix content there, or some some of the PR teams behind some of these brands? That'd make some great shows there.
If we're allowed to do that.
If we were allowed to do that, exactly.
But a good example of that is Commonwealth Bank, who wanted to sort of really take those kind of, that sentiment that was rising around cost of living and, really, I guess, serve its customers by giving it more through content. So, we don't really actually sort of pitch a magazine anymore in terms of like a central part of a content strategy. But, Joe Bowdy, who's a very smart CMO who had come from Qantas, said, I want to give my customers something when they're in store that helps them in terms of financial well-being or, how to tackle the cost of living crisis. So we came up with a magazine called Brighter, and it's just changed the world in terms of the in-store branch experience, because mostly from the employees of CommBank, they've got something to talk to the customers about, and the customers feel like they're being rewarded by learning more about, what to do with their finances. And it's not about selling more CommBank products. It's actually about helping the consumer, as I said, not selling to the consumer. That's exploded. So we've actually just released an 8-part TV series in conjunction with Paramount and 10, which is airing every Saturday night. It's almost like the Healthy, Wealthy and Wise of old.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And the stats have been really good. And it's, linear and playback TV. But, in the first couple of weeks, they're reaching up to 1 million people.
Wow. So like content series on TV, in-store stuff, digital screens, magazines, you're doing it all. Back to the retail media work, you're also commercializing it, right? So your long-standing partnership with David Jones, and it's a beautiful magazine and beautiful content everywhere else. You also helped them launch their retail media arm, David Jones Amplify. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
But I think the success of, the agencies is because, a lot of us have come from the publishing world, and, Paul and I have worked for years in that, where you'll have, a brand or an asset which becomes really attractive to a particular set of advertisers. Like, Paul and I did that with Vogue and GQ back in the day, where, while they had a small footprint in terms of their print audience, their influence online and on social just exploded, and that attracted very particular amounts of sponsorship so that we could actually activate the audience to go and do something. So go to Men of the Year or Vogue Shopping Night Out. When we saw what was happening with David Jones and the content program that we were doing for that, and came with a very smart CMO, James Holloman, realizing the potential of his audience, not just as consumers, but as also an audience for other brands to reach, he wanted to launch David Jones Amplify. So we had been, producing the catalogs, a quarterly magazine for them called Jones, and also creating the beautiful imagery within all the stores. So we were well set when, he was ready to actually take that into, I guess, a publishing model where he opened up the David Jones ecosystem and his audience to other brands that actually wanted to talk to the same demographic. So how we work with David Jones Amplify is, the buyers and the internal teams of David Jones still talk to their suppliers. So, they've got long-standing relationships with Chanel. So we don't want to add any kind of double up by talking to Chanel when, David Jones have already got a strong partnership with them.
Yeah.
We talk to non-endemic brands. So we'll talk to the likes of Range Rover, Porsche, travel brands, and show them how they can activate within the David Jones world. So a really cool one we just did recently was with Regent Cruises. I'm not sure if you're around Easter time, but they took over all the windows of Elizabeth Street, David Jones. We helped them create what was activation. So rather than looking at mannequins, you were looking into the cabin of a Regent.
Yeah, that's great real estate to use too, right?
And so complementary, as you said, you sort of, they've got those relationships, those long-standing relationships with the brands that have always been synonymous with David Jones, but you're helping them achieve commercial outcomes outside of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then obviously because, the way we work, it's like, okay, yes, a window is great, but that's also just kind of broadcast. So then what we actually did was activations throughout the flagship stores. So I hosted a morning tea with, David Jones' most exclusive customers, and they were able to hear the Regent 7 Cruises story. So we presented, obviously relating to fashion and style, we sort of said, here's what we'd be showing and wearing from the David Jones range on a cruise. So it worked perfectly. And then obviously there's lead generation. So then they had a concierge set out in the 7th floor, almost like you were walking into a ship and you could sign up and all.
Yeah, that's cool.
About the next trip.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're right in the retail media hot seat at the moment, aren't you? It's because it's really exploding.
Yeah, it is. It's every second media story that you see, either Paul Blackburn is talking about it, or where
he talks a lot about it, doesn't he?
Yeah, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He talks a lot generally. So
I think we need to play a word count back so far on this podcast to see who's done the most talking. But let's keep going.
Yeah, it is. And listen, a lot of brands would say, hey, we've been doing this for years. Now you're just calling it retail media. And I guess, if you look at...
Yeah, it ties it together. We're pulling it all together now, right?
You're defining it. Yeah.
Correct.
And Nick, like retail media, it's opening up the different canvases within the retail environment. But again, I think that the content piece is what pulls it all together for me. And, that's why we find your business so interesting is, all these different silos and all these different canvases from, like you said before, the windows to the in-store screens, to the magazine, to the social environments. It needs that content strategy to pull those all together and make them work cohesively. Yeah. And that's what I think you guys are just absolutely leading the way. And I'm sure why Coles and Coles 360 and those guys are continuing to want it to work with you guys.
Yeah, so when I got back with Medium Rare, look, I just came back as, I guess, the group content director. And look, for the first day, we were sort of standing up a new social strategy for Coles. So after a world of living in that sort of luxury publishing life, the second day at Medium Rare, I was doing a nacho video shoot for Coles. I was like, what's my life come to? But then, and you realize just the power of these content ecosystems.
Yeah.
Very quickly got on board that actually there's more growth that we can add. So rather than just being seen as, I guess, the production partner for like a Coles or a Officeworks where, we produce the magazine and we do your YouTube, we embedded, I guess, a strategic backbone to the agencies, which goes across Suddenly and Storiation now, and that's called the Client Innovation Team. So that's not necessarily a content production team, it's a pure strategy team. So they've got content strategists, social media strategists, audience development strategists. How does content play into the UX or the CX of an experience? So these people are really smart and far smarter than I. So I think that's given us, I guess, an elevation within the industry that, hey, the creative agency and the media agency needs to have Medium Rare in the discussion around, I guess, not just content, but now retail media.
So I was lucky enough to be in a meeting recently and hearing from Joe as someone from that team, and absolutely blown away by how you're able to talk retail, but also bring it back to a content solution. I was sitting there just taking notes, just blown away by how the insight that you guys have around how you translate that retail outcome that, retailers know so well, that's what they do, into something that is going to turn into a beautiful piece of content that their audience is going to be seeking out and valuing. As you said before, that's that value equation that they get back from the content that you guys are producing.
Yeah, look, so we take the same approach to kind of, I guess, what you'd call in traditional publishing native content or content for the partners of brands. So we put the same sort of journalistic lens through it. So, what we see in the Qantas ecosystem is that the native content, or the content that we produce for the partners of Qantas, whether that's a luxury brand or a travel partner, in terms of the performance, it performs as good or better than the editorial content that we're producing just for, say, Travel Insider or the magazine. So I guess with that kind of, that sort of journalistic or that editorial lens, even though that sounds a bit old school, we still make sure that we have that in every piece of content that we produce. And that's why it works so well. And it's, you're right, Paul, it's like, we could put ads everywhere through that ecosystem, but, what we found, even if you're amplifying content, it's working better than, I guess, traditional advertising creating because
the journalistic quality to it. As I said, you're like right in the retail media, and I think what you're talking about is some of the foundation stuff that makes retail media successful. That Paul and I talk a lot about content commerce and connecting commerce to content as part of this whole retail media play. Retail media has been exploding. It's been on the scene for a few years now, but it's voracious. It's not slowing down. Where do you see it going?
Back to why it's working, and I guess back to some of the original point about these brands that we're working with. I see every time that list comes up from either a Roy Morgan or another outfit that the brands that we're working with are the most trusted brands in Australia. So, and sometimes they do, as we were saying, sometimes they go through rough patches, and the consumers rise up and talk about what's going on, but it's because they're talking about the trusted brands that they use day in and day out. So I can understand then if you are looking to deliver a message to that consumer when they're in the environment that they trust and love, your message is going to land. It's going to land more. And again, even though Commonwealth Bank is a new sort of player within that sort of, I guess, owned media territory, you got to think that it's the people's bank, right? You grew up with that,
It's such brand affinity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing similar things happening in different markets where, just as you're saying, that brand affinity and that brand love has been being able to provide messaging and leveraging that to actually drive out different outcomes.
Yeah.
Right?
And so previously, in publishing world, again, like I would have thought actually someone would go to Vogue first before they go to David Jones. It's not the case because they're also, Vogue is still very important. I can't forget my roots, but they are having a special experience within David Jones because they're going in and feeling the product. They're in an environment that chose to go to. So delivering messages in there is actually going to land because also they're in, I guess, a commercial mind frame that they're there to shop, right? And get something and be rewarded. So more and more, I think brands who probably before would have thought, there's no way I'm going to sell that real estate. That's mine. And I'm not going to sell it to another brand. More and more, they're going to realize the potential of the audience that they have to actually make either the content that they make effective because it's been monetized and it's kind of been paid for along the way, or they're going to be able to give their existing partners who they probably haven't told the value of their ecosystem before, they're going to have a more than a transactional relationship with those partners because they're going to tell that partner, hey, what we're giving you through our owned media ecosystem is really valuable. So you actually have to provide something better for our customer when you're activating.
I love when another brand is saying, hey, we're going to think differently here. We're going to let another brand in to leverage our brand and we can build and grow together. I think that's really exciting. Yeah, it's meaningful too.
So Nick Smith, thank you for joining us. Final serious question before I think Nick Morgan wants to have a little bit of fun with some quick fire questions.
I do.
What advice would you give brands that are looking to leverage content effectively to drive both awareness, but also that elusive sales outcome?
we found the answer to that actually. So again, when I got back to medium rare, I'm like, I have to understand why consumers in Australia are just loving content from brands. So I think for the first time ever, we had a landmark research study, which was a lot of qualitative work with, giving consumers diaries, and they had to tell us when they were consuming content from brands. And then we did, quite a large quantitative study to back it up. And what we found was that consumers are now saying that the first time they find out about a product or service, and 73% of Australians say it's through content. And you can understand why that is, because everything we do, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or digital, we're in control of when we find out about a product or service. And when we do find out about it, it's via content. It's not necessarily through an ad first. In that old model, you'll see something, advertised, and you'll go and search and find out about it. We're in the control seat. So we're like, I've got this idea. Let me Google search that first. And what do you land on? Content. So I think if brands are kind of thinking, oh gosh, we've got a strategy team that can help you get into it, but also if people are sort of on the fence of going, oh, that sounds like a very long play and I'm not sure how I can win, you have to get into it and you have to provide good content. That's my best advice.
Really interesting. We heard from Evan Shapiro last week around the user-centric era and the importance of content to get within their hierarchy of feeds, I think he spoke of. And the only way you're going to get into that hierarchy of feeds is having that compelling content. So what you're saying sounds like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Evan Shapiro is one of Paul's good friends, and as Evan Shapiro says, content is still king. So that makes Nick Smith the Kingmaker, doesn't it?
I think it does. I mean, he's got all the trust of these massive, iconic Australian brands.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
No doubt.
Nick Smith, the Kingmaker. Was it MD? No, I think it's Kingmaker.
Nah, Kingmaker.
I'm going to change my email signature right after this. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right. Rapid fire, quick questions. I love these ones. We're about commerce, we're what's happening. So I'm going to fire them at you, Nick. I want top of your head, please. What's up here in the mind tank? Give it to me. Number one, what's the last thing you bought online?
Ooh, earphones, actually, earbuds.
So I was talking about Paul about that just before that.
Yeah.
No, Paul.
Were they wireless or?
They're here. I tried to hook them up to my laptop this morning, but I was running so late that I didn't.
Well, they were trying to tell me to have wired ones, and I went, okay, boomer.
Okay. Next, what podcast are you currently listening to? There's so many.
You know what? I actually listened to one that we created for a brand. It's called Life's Booming. It's for Australian seniors. It's actually about grey nomads. We've got James Valentine to host it. It is just the best produced podcast. I'm so proud of it. So actually, that is the last one I've actually, listened to. But at the moment, I'm into a lot of self-help.
Aren't we all?
I am binging them like no other. Obviously, not happy with myself. I must be going to a midlife crisis. So I'm trying to better myself.
I don't think you have a problem there, mate. You're doing very well. Okay, what's your go-to online shop? Where do you like to shop?
Oh gosh,
everyone's got them.
What would I say to that? I still am a fan of Mr. Porter, I must say. Like
he called it.
Yeah.
Yep, Paul called it.
Yeah, I've worked with them a lot in the past, and so it is always probably just the habit after all this time. I know there's lots more in Australia.
They've got great, so their content is beautiful content, right? It's great content. Do you TikTok? Are you on TikTok?
I am. I guess I am a voyeur on TikTok. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, are you a watcher or are you actually engaged? Yeah, you're watching.
Voyeur. And have you ever been down the TikTok hole? Like seriously?
I can't have it on my phone because time just evaporates. All of a sudden it's Wednesday and then Saturday. So no.
I found myself like just in hysterics at like 11:30 at night. And my phone's on, what is going on? And tears after this one person on TikTok who was like just, I don't know, just making fart noises in the street or something.
Yeah, some wild content on there. Okay, last one. What's your most memorable ad campaign? And I'm sure you've been across so many.
Gee, I was actually thinking about this because I thought this might come up. And it's like, if we asked a consumer that, they'd go, oh, I can't remember like the last memorable ad campaign, but I could remember that recipe in Coles magazine because I've made it and I've shared it and then I've got the results on Instagram. So I was actually trying to think what it was and I actually couldn't. Is that bad?
No, not at all. It's a great answer. Fantastic.
Well, Nick Smith, thank you so much for an awesome session. I guess, we'll leave you with your new title as the Kingmaker.
The Kingmaker.
Thank you so much for joining us on Commerce Media Matters.
Thank you, mate.
Great. Thanks for having me, guys, and good to see you.
Cheers.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Commerce Media Matters podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe. We're always on the pulse of the ever-changing landscape of commerce media, ready to share the newest trends, insightful perspectives, and expert opinions with you. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep making media that matters. This podcast is executively produced and edited by Priya Tahazadeh, with co-producers Sandy Ho, Meg Lirsch, and me, Rachel Fang.
Keep it to yourself.
Insightful perspectives and Welcome to